The 1-2-3 rule and how to use the 1-2-3 rule for tropical storm avoidance. The rule is actually based on the 34 knots rule. What does it mean, 34 knots rule? For vessels at sea, avoiding the 34 knots wind field of a hurricane is paramount because this is rule for 7. 34 knots is chosen as a critical value because as wind speed increases to this speed, 34 knots, sea state development approaches critical levels, resulting in rapidly decreasing limits to ship maneuverability. It also deserves mention that the state of the sea outside of the radius of 34 knot winds can also be significant enough as to limit course and speed options available to the mariner and must also be considered when avoiding hurricanes. So this is a 1-2-3 rule. We have the actual position and 1, 2, 3. That means these 3 forecasts, 24, 48, and 7200 hours. This is the single most important aid in accounting for hurricane forecast track errors, because here these circles here around this 100, 200, and 300 nautical miles are balancing the forecast track error. Understanding and use of this technique should be mandatory for any vessel operating near a hurricane. The rule is derived from the latest 10-year average, FTE, that means forecast track errors associated with hurricanes in the North Atlantic. Application of the rule requires information from the Weather Institute or Meteorological Institute and is extremely important to remaining clear of a hurricane at sea. The 1-2-3 rule established a minimum recommended distance to maintain from a hurricane in the Atlantic. Larger buffer zones should be established in situations with higher forecast uncertainty, limited crew experience, decreased vessel handling, or other factors set by the vessel's master, meaning a large tanker, a huge bulk carrier, or a large container ship are all maneuvering in a different way. That means we might increase this radius instead of 100, 200, 300 to 200, 400, and 500 nautical miles. So this depends on the master. The rule does not account for sudden and rapid intensification of hurricanes that could result in an outward expansion of the 34 knot wind field. So with this wind field, we always consider as constant. Also, the rule does not account for typical expansion of the wind field as the system transitions from hurricane to extratropical gales. So we can see this here, the actual position, the 34 knot wind radius, and this is constant for all the forecast position. And now we are adding here always to the radius of 34 knot wind our 200 and 300 and or here 100 nautical miles radius. So let's do this in an example. So first of all, what we need is a forecast for 24, 48, and 7200 hours. And then we apply the rule. And that means we are drawing a circle around the hurricane initial position with the equal radius of maximum 34 knot wind, what is given in the tropical storm warning. So these are the positions, and that is now my wind field of 34 knots. It is here 120 nautical miles. So around this now we have to apply the 1-2-3 rule. So to be reminded, it's 100 nautical miles for the 24, 200 for 48, and 300 for the 7200 hours position. So which means this gives us actual then the radius is constant with 34 knots. So which means here 220, 200 nautical miles plus 120 is 320, and here 300 plus 120 is 420. So which means if this wind field is changing, that means if we have at the actual position, let's say 200 nautical miles, then it's 100 plus 200 and so on. So these results will be now placed around the 24, 48, and 7200 hour position. So now what we can see, this gives me now the radius which is required, so which means my zone I have to avoid. So if I connect this now, all this radii, including the actual position, coming to such a figure, So which means this is now the area which have to be avoided if I will approach to the tropical storm. So let's do this in another example on hand of a tracking chart. These tracking charts are very advisable and should be on board of the ship. So let's see how it works. Here on the tracking chart, let's assume we have certain positions. What we include now into our chart, because it is a forecast given by the Meteorological Institute, like this, here and here, and this is my actual position. So my 34 knots wind field, which is given by the Nautical Institute or the forecaster, is 220 nautical miles. So that I have as a information given and which have to be now used for my calculation. So meaning I have now to prepare first of all my radius of 220 nautical miles around the positions. Let's say this are 220 nautical miles. So what's this? So, and we have here then, this is always constant, remains constant, because wind field, we said we cannot change. We keep it constant all over the whole position of the tropical storm. So now we have to calculate the radius, what is required now for the 24, 48, and 7200 hour position. So which means we have 100 plus 220 equals here 320 nautical miles. The next one was 200 plus 220 equals 420 nautical miles. And the last one we said 300, this is this forecast track error, plus 220, this is a wind field of 34 knots. And this is now 520 nautical miles. So, and these parts I have now to add to the 24, 48, and 7200 hour position. So first of all, 320 nautical miles. So let's move it like this. The next one is 420 nautical miles. Is here. And the last one is now 300 and plus the 220 is 520. So let's assume, so which is 520. So this is how it looks like. So we are again marking our position. Say yes. We have to turn around here. So and here as well. You're a little bit more exact here. So this is actually now the wind field and the cross-track arrow, which is actually the forecast arrow, which is actually required. So now let's assume that your ship is on a course, let's say from here straight to Jacksonville, and the position of your ship is here. So that is actually where your ship is located. Ship is here. And this is actually here the 24th. This is the actual position is here. Then we have here the 25th. That is my position on a 24-hour, which is here. Then I have here the 26th. And we have finally here the 27th position. It's here. So my ship is actually here, and this is on the 26th. So what we can see, from my position, I will run into the dangerous circle, so which means I have to alter my course to avoid this, which means just alter the course like this. So that is my course of action I have to do according to the 1, 2, 3 rule. If I now want to have a very exact one, I have to make the tropical storm plot, but this is how I have to avoid this, because if I would assume my course, see, I would run here, that is very dangerous. I would cross the tropical storm, and this is very dangerous. So it should be avoided under all circumstances. Okay, that is actually how the 1, 2, 3 rule is working and how to use it. So you see, if you have such a tracking chart on hand, it's very simple, and we have a rough idea of what can be done. Okay, thank you very much, and just exercise. That is all.